Okie dokie. So I am going to start the long process of making sourdough bread. Sorry, it's very early. I have not had my coffee yet. I fed the chickens, I fed the horses. The dogs have been out. I'm about to leave to start um, getting my day going. I have a couple appointments today, but I needed to take my starter out, get her set to room temperature. And when I come back, I'm going to show you how to mix her, how to do the autolyse, at least for in my area. Um, and I'll go into more detail on that. But this is Tilly. Tilly, aka Matilda, is my starter. She is a year old. I keep her in the fridge. Um, Usually during the winter months, I'll keep her on the counter if I'm making a lot of bread. But if I'm only making bread, say once a week, once every other week, once a month, whatever it may end up being, I just keep her in the refrigerator. And I'll go into more detail on what happens to your sourdough in just a moment, your starter when it's in the refrigerator. Now, I need to get my coffee and get my appointments going. So this is going to sit here. It's very cold, so it's got to come to room temperature. It is, and we are in our fall for Colorado, which I actually don't think it's a false fall. I think it's just a cool front. But we had quite a bit of rain yesterday and last night, which is very nice because it was much needed. We've got temperatures between the 60s and the 70s today. So we will see how that progresses. And I think they're supposed to spike back up this weekend, but we'll see. So get your starter out. If it's in the refrigerator, get her out of there, him out of there, it out of there, they out of there, and let them come to room temperature. And then we're gonna go ahead and start doing our mixes, and I'll show you what I do. Alrighty, so I am back from my appointment. Tilly is room temperature. She is ready to go. So what we're going to do first is feed it. Now, depending on your location, your sea level, where you're at, will depend on how much. The consistency that you're looking for is going to be a thick pancake batter. That's what you're looking for. That's how much your starter is going to need to have, both in water and in flour, to be fed, to feed off of itself and to activate. And what you're looking for once it's active, because it goes up and then it'll fall back down. And excuse me, get that off. Um, your starter will feed. And when it's at its height, when it's at its most active, its bubbliest is when you're going to want to use it. That's a kind of annoying part of making sourdough, is we're at its beck and call. And so that's what we're going to do. Now I am making 4 loaves this week. My daughter is going away for the weekend, and she's going to take some with her to her friend's family's house. And then husband's going to be home this weekend. So I'm going to make 4 different loaves. So typically for the elevation that I'm in, I need less starter and less time of it fermenting and proofing. The more you ferment it, the better. But if you overproof it, it does fall. So it gets very confusing. So I'm making 4 loaves. So I typically, when I cook mine, when I make my bread, I use 50 grams of starter, of active starter. I use 350 to 75 in warm water, and then 500 in flour per loaf. And then we'll get into the salt and the olive oil and the inclusions and things like that. And I'll tell you when it's good to use them and when it's not. So we are going to start off. I'm going to feed Tilly, and I'm only going to feed her a little bit, or not a little bit. I'm only going to use a little bit of her. Now, she does have some hooch. I know, funky word. But if you store your starter in the refrigerator, you're going to have this, I don't know if you can see it before I spill it out, dark grayish black, watery, milky, watery fluid that sits on the top. That's okay. Your starter is still fine. You're just going to dump that out. You're not going to mix it in. You're going to dump it out. Okay. Now, I store my starter in the refrigerator. Don't pour any of your starter down the drain. But I do want to get all of this out. Don't store, during the cold summer months, you can store your starter on the counter. But during the winter or during the summertime, because it is so warm, I put mine in the fridge. You can put it in the fridge and leave it there for months on end. Pour the hooch out and then feed it, and you're good to go. That is how good and the benefits of sourdough at home are. All right, now I'm not going to measure this a whole lot, just because I am going to feed it, her. And then I'm going to also feed her. I'm going to leave one on the counter, both on the counter, and then once she comes down, then we will take her and put her back in the fridge. And again, no measurements on this one because we are just feeding her. But I do need a lot, so I'm going to put probably, how many quarter cups is this? This is a third cup. All right, so a full cup, because we are doing 4 loaves. I may end up doing more. We'll see. Okay. And you do want to get yourself a scale. I thought, no, I don't need a scale. No, I don't need this. I don't need that. You do. All right. Get this all mixed up. Okay. The flies are still active out here. All right. A little more water. Now, depending on your area will depend on how much or what thickness you want and what you rise at. So this is what I do it at. It's a very thick pancake batter, and that does wonders for the higher elevation. Now, we're going to cover that, and is anyone else's Tupperware door just a nightmare? So we're going to cover that. I'm going to put her back in there, and we're going to put that in a warm area. You are going to cover it tight, and you're going to put it in a warm area for it to grow. Typically, for it to get active, you want temperatures around 70 degrees. It is about 65 today. We are completely covered in rain clouds. So I'm going to stick this in my oven. I'm not going to turn the oven on. I am just going to turn the light on. And that's enough warmth for it. Okay? And then just turn your light on. And then just check it periodically. Now, for the one that I'm going to put back in the fridge, I actually have quite a bit in here. But I'm going to feed it anyway. Her. And I'm just going to put a third of a cup just to increase the volume and to feed her so she's happy. Now, while she's feeding, I will leave her on the counter. And then once she rises and then drops, then I'll put her back in the fridge. And I typically will clean my jar depending on how often I'm cooking or baking. I'm going to leave her covered, and I'm going to leave her on the counter. A good way to gauge it is if you're doing it this way, you've got one in the oven that you're going to use to bake, and you've got one that you're just feeding, and then you're going to put back in the fridge. Keep an eye on her. See how far she rises. You want her to double in size. And then at that point, she will start to recede. Her hairline will get a little, receding. And then at that point, it's time to use her up or stick her in the fridge. And again, like I said, you can stick her in the fridge for however long you want, as long as you're just maintaining her. I would suggest feeding her at least once a month. Even if you're not using her, feed her once a month, make her happy, that type of thing. All right. So once that's done proofing or rising, then we're going to go ahead and do our next step. Now, the next step is a little controversial. I've done it both ways. It's called autolyse. I've done it where I have made it immediately and my loaves do not rise. I've mixed my starter, I've mixed my flour, I've mixed my salt, I've mixed my warm water, I've mixed, if I'm using olive oil, which I'll get into later, and I've done the loaves both ways. For the elevation that we're in, I am convinced that the autolyse is the best way to go, because, and all you're doing is you're taking your starter, your flour, and your water, and you're letting it sit, and you're letting the flour rehydrate. I usually let it sit for about an hour, and then I'll go in and put my my salt, my olive oil, any inclusions that you're putting in, that type of thing. I'll put them in at that point. But we'll get to that when we get to that. So let's let her sit. Let's let her, both of them feed, and we'll get back to that. Hey everyone. So I've had a busy morning, and I haven't quite gotten to my starter yet, but we let her sit overnight. We let her feed. And if you look at the bowl, you can see right up here is where she rose, and right down here is where she's at now. So I have got to go and run an errand. I'm going to feed her one more time. Hopefully she'll rise this evening and we can start doing our autolyse. Well, good morning, everyone. This is I think 2 days later. It's been a lot cooler here, so it's taken a little bit longer for Tilly to rise. But what you're looking for when you're doing your starter, obviously she has bubbled up a lot. There's two different things that you're looking for. You're going to look for the weight. She's very light. She's very bubbly. Almost looks like, if you ever saw Gremlins, when Mogwai gets water on him, how he bubbles up. That's what you're looking for. Really gross way to describe it, but you're looking for it to also be nice and light. And so that's what we're going to be looking for. Now, when you are doing your autolyse, I have found the autolyse works better for me. And an autolyse basically is letting your starter sit in water, and just really continue to ferment. That's what we're doing here when we're feeding our starter, is we're letting it feed off of it and grow and bubble and get all nice and yummy. Next, we're going to do, like I said, the autolyse. I'm making 3 different types of loaves. My daughter is going to her friend's house this weekend, and so I'm making them some. Husband comes home today, so making him some. So what we're doing is we're going to take however much. Now, when it comes to the amount of starter that you're going to put in your bread, it's going to take you some time to figure it out. Don't get frustrated. It's taken me over a year to figure out bread. For my area, because of the elevation that I'm at, because I like it a lot more, what's the word? Bitter. The more sour taste that you want, the less starter you're going to put in. And the shorter amount of, or well, it really just depends, the longer amount of fermentation that you're going to have. Now, I cold ferment. It just works better for me. I get a better rise. You may just want to have it ferment overnight on your countertop, which is fine. I actually put mine in the refrigerator for 2 days. And so we'll get to that part. But what we're doing right now, the autolyse, I'm going to use 50 grams of starter. And of course, all of my bowls are out somewhere. And I do use a scale. A scale is honestly your best friend. All right, exactly 50 grams. Clear that. And I'm going to have quite a bit left over, so I usually give it to the chickens. They can definitely enjoy the starter. Now, what I will say is do not pour your leftover starter down the drain, down your disposal. It will mess your pipes up. You can feed it to your chickens. You can put it back into the refrigerator and add it to your other starter, whatever you want to do. Come on. There we go. All right. Okay. So I still have quite a bit of starter left. So I'm actually going to give that to the chickens later on. That'll be their evening snack. And then I just cover that back up. Now, typical ratios, however much starter you want is fine. But my ratios for this area are going to be 50 grams of starter, 350, about 350 to 375 of warm water. And then I'm going to let that sit. I'm going to stir it and let it sit. Okay. And then after that, I'm going to add 500 grams of flour, all-purpose flour, about 15 to 20 grams of salt, and then about between 40 and 50 grams of olive oil. Now, if you like a harder crust, a crumb, then obviously omit the olive oil. I put it in because my husband, well, you know, anyway. So I add that water in, the oil in for him. Okay. So we're going to put 350. And my coffee is yelling at me. It is very early. I have already had 1 cup. Everybody is up and fed. Now I'm going to start out with 350 on this one. And 350 on this one. Now, the reason why I say between 350 and 375, at least for my area and my type of bread that I like, is because when I put the flour in, if I feel it's too thick, then I'll add a little bit more water. All right, 350, 350, 350. All right, and we are going to stir. And I've got a bunch of errands today so this sitting on the counter to rehydrate after I add the flour in is going to be perfect timing. So we're going to let this autolyse for about, let's see, I think 20 minutes. I don't know what time it is. It's so early. For 20 minutes. And then we're going to add our 500 grams of flour. Now, when you add the flour, you're going to let that sit for at least an hour. Flour hour. And that allows the flour to rehydrate and absorb all of the water and just really rehydrate itself. cover that up and let it sit. Okie dokie. That has sat for about a half an hour. I had to rewarm my coffee. And now we're going to add 500 grams of flour into our starter. Okie dokie. Now you can use bread flour, you can use all-purpose flour. I know there's a lot of videos out there that say specifically use this, specifically use that. It really is your preference and your taste. I've had success with both bread flour and all-purpose flour. All-purpose flour is just a little bit cheaper, but it just really depends on what your tastes are, what your budget is. You could also make your starter with either. It's just really going to depend on your taste preference, your budget, so forth. But don't get frustrated. It really does take a long time. And it is such a simple process. Once you get it, once it clicks, it's like the sun has come on. Or the light bulbs come on. And I made quite a few starters and have just I got so frustrated and sidetracked that I just gave up. I threw it out. I threw quite a few out. My husband kept telling me, keep trying, keep trying. And I watched so many videos and so many people who have made starter, had been on that sourdough dough journey. And there were really a lot of neat tips. The best one that I've found when it comes to making sourdough or making your starter is the consistency. And it may be different in your area. The consistency may be, it might not be thick pancake mix. It might be, something a little thicker. It might be something a little thinner. It just really depends on your area. Okay, I need more. I have 4 different containers full of all-purpose flour, bread flour, pizza flour. It's ridiculous. But everything makes a different type of crumb. All right. Okay. And so if you have a scale, these things are a true lifesaver. They are fantastic, but do not stir your bowl on your scale. It will mess it up completely. Okay, and so all you're doing when you're doing this is you're just mixing in the flour so there is no dry flour. Really get in there before you start to add more water. And it's going to be a shaggy dough. It's going to seem almost borderline dry, but you really want to mix it in before you add more water. You can always add more water, but you can't take away. And I love my Amish mixer. I didn't get the wood one because I break everything. I used to have, I almost killed my son once. If his mom is watching, I swear it wasn't that bad. But I have a tendency of when I take something out of the oven, I'll go to turn it off, but for some reason, I'll always turn on one of the burners, and it always ends up being one of the burners, the burner that I put that glass piece on. I've done this twice now, and I did it once with the pie when I was making an apple pie, and my son was in the kitchen and it burst. Thankfully, they make them where it's not in, horrible shards. They're bigger chunks. But it scared the bejesus out of me and obviously him. And I did it again. I made what did I make? I think it was a loaf of bread in my glass bread pan. And I did it again. And I finally decided I'm no longer buying glass. Actually, I think my husband decided that for me. No, he doesn't care. All right, so we're going to get these all mixed up, and it is going to be super sticky, and that's what you want. And what I'll do is when I start my stretch and folds, if I feel like there is too much or not enough water, I'll get my hands, because when you do your stretch and folds, you want to do it with wet hands. And that way the dough does not, well, it does stick to you, but it doesn't stick to you as much. And if I need to add more water that way, then I'll just get my hands nice and wet and drip a little off of my hands into the dough. Okay, nice and shaggy. Get all that flour in there, no dry flour left. And this is what we are looking for. A very nice, shaggy dough, very sticky. You are going to let those sit for an hour and rehydrate. Get that flour in there, and really let it hydrate. And then we're going to add if we need more water, we're going to add more water. We're going to add our salt at that point. And then we're going to add our olive oil at that point, if you choose to use olive oil. Now, I will say when you're using olive oil, play with it. I started out at 30 grams, or I think 20 grams. I did the equal amount of salt. And I progressively increased it depending on how I wanted the crumb to be. And for me, about 45 is kind of what my taste buds like. I like it, the crumb, which is the outer layer, a little bit crispier. My husband likes it a lot softer, so we kind of have to meet in the middle, as every marriage should. So we're going to let that sit for an hour, and then we'll be back and we'll start all of that stuff. Okay, so it has been a little bit. Looks like 3 hours. It's been a busy morning. Husband is back from his trip, and we are going to get started on these stretch and folds. Let's see how they look. Lovely. Okay. So what we're going to do on your stretch and folds, and you'll want to do about 6 stretch and folds. And what that is doing is it is stretching the elastin and developing your gluten in your bread. And what I do is, you can do it 2 ways. You can do it this way, where you're just stretching the dough. There's no methodical real way to do it. You're just stretching the dough. And you'll start doing that every 15 minutes after your autolyse is done. You can do it that way. You can do it this way. You pull, turn the bowl, pull, turn the bowl, put some more water on my hands, pull, turn the bowl. And this consistency looks really good. I don't think I need to add any water. All right. You'll want to try to not use a plastic bowl. It's the only one I had that was big enough, just because it does stick so much. Ceramic is best, but whatever you have. See how that gluten is getting really tight? That's from that long sitting autolyse that I did. I don't normally let it sit that long, but it was a busy morning. All right. And then you're going to let that sit again for another 15 minutes. Come back, do your next stretch and folds. Your stretch and folds really are just going to be getting that gluten stretched. You can do 4 like I did with the bowl turn, or you can do the hand folding like I did on the first one. And this gluten, this dough is really sticky to my hands. I was like, after I do my stretch and folds, I go to sit down and I've got patches of bread on my fingers. All right. All right. We'll let those sit. Stretch and fold. You're going to put your salt and your olive oil if you choose to. Now, with your salt, typically it's about, this is what happens when I don't put my glasses on. It's about 20 grams. It just really depends on your salt intake and what you like. And I'm going to do 15 because I am doing inclusions in these. Okay. All right. And I have got 3 different olive oils. I've got the plain olive oil. We're going to do about 40. And then I've got garlic olive oil. Actually, I'm going to turn this upside down. And the garlic one, I'm going to do a garlic croissant bread. All right. And then I've got rosemary. And I'm going to do a rosemary Asiago. All right. And I'm going to leave those in front of the bowls so I can remember which is which. And then we'll put I guess I'll put them, line them up like this so I know which is which. And we'll get these stretch and folded, and we'll incorporate that olive oil and salt. If you forget your salt, your bread will taste horrible. And then once you put the oil in, if you use oil, it's a lot easier to do your folds. But you'll want to feel that salt get incorporated in there. Okay. And with the plastic one, you'll notice it is difficult to get your dough off of the bottom of the bowl. So using a bench scraper is always a good thing. All right. It'll take a couple times if you are using the olive oil. It'll take a couple times just for it. Couple stretch and folds so that will get incorporated in there. And you'll just want to play with it. And then let it sit again for 15 minutes. Okay, stretch and fold number 3, 4, I think. If you're using olive oil, you'll see that the olive oil is kind of sitting at the top. You want to make sure that you really get that incorporated through your stretch and folds. It's almost going to remind you of a pizza dough. And even though it is pliable, you want to make sure that you really get this stretched. And you'll feel as you're stretching it, it break apart. And you'll want to just really get in there. All right. stretch and fold number 3, 4, I think. If you're using olive oil, you'll see that the olive oil is kind of sitting at the top. You want to make sure that you really get that incorporated through your stretch and folds. All right. So the next one that we're going to do after this stretch and fold is we're going to put our inclusions in. Now, inclusions are optional, obviously, and you can be as experimental as you want. I've seen blueberry lemon sourdough. I've seen chocolate chip sourdough. All kinds. All right. And the inclusions that I'm going to be doing are going to be, where is it? We're going to do rosemary garlic, Asiago garlic, and then this one we're going to do a croissant sourdough. The croissant sourdough is going to have shredded frozen butter in it. And what that does is it makes those layers of butter that you usually have with a croissant make your dough flaky and light and crispy and just absolutely lovely. So we're going to prepare those. So if you want to do inclusions, get them ready and we'll get those done. Next step is going to be inclusions. Now, the first one I'm going to be doing is the dough that we use the rosemary oil in. So I'm going to do a rosemary garlic. Okay. So I'm going to take this out, and I used just a little bit of rice flour down here. And we are going to take this and we are going to stretch it out into a rectangle. Okay. You don't want to add too much, just enough so it doesn't stick to your countertop. All right. What did I say? Rosemary, garlic. All right. So I have here my chopped up rosemary and my chopped up garlic. Put a nice little layer here. Okay. And you're going to take that and you're going to fold it into thirds. Okay. You're going to put a little bit more up here. Okay. Get that in there to stick. Get some more of this. And then we're going to roll it. And then what you're going to do is you're going to tighten it. And you're going to take it and you're going to pull it towards you. And that's going to tighten that outer skin and pull it towards you. And then you are good. Then I'm going to take it and I'm going to put it in my Benetton bowl. This is floured with the rice flour. And we're just going to put it in just like that. And we'll do the next one. The next one we are going to do with the garlic oil. I did want to sprinkle some of this on top just so you know which one it is. Actually, I'll just take the whole thing. Just dump the whole thing on there. All right. The next one is going to be with the garlic oil. Okie dokie. So for this one, the last one, I forgot we were going to be doing a croissant sourdough loaf. So I pulled it back out of my Benetton basket, got it out here, and all you're going to do is shred frozen butter, a frozen butter stick. Now, typically you would use a full stick, but because I do have oil in this, I'm only using a half a stick. So you're going to put your layer on here. You're going to do your trifold. Okay. And then you're going to get some more and put it on top. Get it on there. And roll. And again, this is the one that's going to make it like a croissant. It's going to give you that light flaky. You're still going to pull it. You're still going to get that in there. See, look at all that yumminess. All right. And then we are going to put this back in the Benetton basket. Now, what we're going to do, what I do is I ferment them in the refrigerator. I do a cold ferment. I leave it in the refrigerator up to 2 days, up to 3 days. You can go if you really want that sourdough taste. I typically do 2 days. I am going to do one full 24 hours this time just because, excuse me, I've got to get this to my daughter tomorrow for her sleepover. So all I'm going to do is get some plastic wrap.
So Kitchen. Now for your host, Becky.
This is what I live with.
Are you coming over here? Are you gonna do your dinner?
Yeah, that's what I live with. You wonder why I buy $40 olive oil. Anyway, it's a little chilly outside. So I finally have sweatshirts on. Okay. Now, these are your silicone mats. I didn't really believe in them all so much. I thought, okay, well, that's just another thing, you know, to whatever. And I bought 2 of them, and I absolutely love them. It does make putting your sourdough into a hot pan a lot easier. You can adjust it. You can also pull them out of the pan if you're doing multiple loaves in one pot. So I love them, and I think I'm actually going to get some more for my baking sheets for my cookies for the holidays. So we'll see. All right, so we've got those all unwrapped. I've got my scoring knife. And we're going to get started. So with this one, all we're going to do is take it and flip it right over. And then I'm going to score it. And you want to do a pretty deep score so you get that ear that you're looking for depending on where at or what you're baking it in. The loaf one, I'm not gonna put in a liner just because it's a loaf pan. It's pretty easy just to kind of slide it in. All right. So typically, traditionally, you want to cook your sourdough in a closed Dutch oven for the first 25-30 minutes. And what that does is the steam actually cooks and makes that rise come up. Now get this one in the cupboard. All right, that goes in. Not that you'll cut something. Smoke alarm's gonna go off. All right, and then my little skillet. This was my mother's camping skillet when she was alive. And she would go, and when she'd go camping, she would cook her food on that. Okie dokie. I just took 2 out of the oven. The loaf is still in there. That's going to be the croissant loaf. It has got a lot of butter in it, so it's taking a little bit longer to brown up. There is your rosemary, garlic. Oh, it's falling off. And your Asiago. So once you're done with them, once you get that nice golden brown color that you want, obviously, again, I don't get a huge rise out of mine just because of where I live. I'm still figuring that out. But you want to let them sit. Don't cut into them. The steam inside of it is still cooking your bread. So you want to let them sit and cool before you even slice into them. Even though my husband's coming over here and he will want me to cut it open. But I'm not going to.
Bread.
Too bad. There's a bottle of vodka. Just embarrassing. Just embarrassing. So try your sourdough. Keep trying, keep trying, keep trying. Don't get discouraged. It is going to take a while, but once you get it, once it clicks and what works for you, I guarantee you, you're going to have a great piece of.
And if you're a husband watching this, be prepared to buy lots of flour while she learns.
A lot of flour.
You might as well have your own wheat fields. It'll be cheaper.
Hey, then I can get a bigger tractor. Have a great day.